Arcata Genoa area reports of a new problem. They cleared the wreck East X Freeway. It was southbound past Tidwell. They were in a couple of left lanes for about 15-20 minutes. That's gone.
Support comes from downtown Houston, a growing urban district and home to performing arts, Houston Rockets and Houston Astros, and global headquarters with over 1 million square feet of office leases signed this year. Details at downtownhouston.org.
Weather brought to you by Paulty Float Attorney Mediator Arbitrator. More sunshine today, few clouds, 92 for the high. Still dry, 76 for the low tonight. Tomorrow looks the same. And then upper 80s, Thursday, Friday going into the weekend as well. 78 Bel Air, 76 here at the University of Houston. Listen anywhere. We're streaming live online at HoustonPublicMedia.org. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. Houston Matters starts right now. Stick around.
A new Texas-based stock exchange has moved one step closer to becoming a reality after receiving approval from the SEC. I'm Michael Haggerty filling in for Craig Cohen. And today on Houston Matters, can the Dallas-based Texas Stock Exchange compete with Wall Street? And what could this mean for Texas and its economy?
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, from solitary confinement to group recreation, we learn how small changes are reshaping life on Texas death row. Then, comedian Maria Bamford has this amazing ability to slip into and out of characters on stage. We talk with her in her real voice and maybe some others ahead of a performance in Houston this week, and how Houston's Korean community is shaping the city's cultural landscape. We start, though, with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Lawmakers are asking her about controversy and turmoil at the Justice Department. Bondi and her top aides have fired several career prosecutors who worked on the Capitol riot cases or investigated President Trump. Bondi defended her record since taking office.
We are returning to our core mission of fighting real crime. While there is more work to do, I believe in 8 short months, we have made tremendous progress towards those ends.
But Bondi is also accused of using her agency for political purposes. Her testimony comes less than 2 weeks after the Justice Department got an indictment against former FBI Director James Comey. President Trump has been demanding that Bondi take legal action against Comey. The U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments today in a case about conversion therapy. NPR's Nina Totenberg reports the case could invalidate laws in half of U.S. states.
Conversion therapy, promoted by some conservative Christian groups, is banned for minors by half the states and staunchly opposed as harmful for minors by every major medical association. But today, lawyers for a Colorado therapist will tell the justices that because she uses only talk therapy, banning the practice violates the Constitution's free speech guarantee. Last term, the High Court upheld state laws that banned the use of hormones and other measures to help minors change their sex. Today, the shoe is on the other foot, so to speak, with a different group of states contending that they ban conversion therapy because it doesn't work and has proven harmful to minors. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
This is the 7th day of the federal government shutdown. It's affecting air traffic controllers who are not getting paid. There were no controllers at the Burbank Airport near Los Angeles last night, although the airport said it was still open. Staffing shortages were also reported in Denver and Newark Liberty Airport in New Jersey. Stocks open mixed this morning as President Trump prepares to host his Canadian counterpart. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow dropped about 20 points in early trading.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney will visit Trump today at the White House for the second time, hoping to smooth some of the trade tensions that have been sparked by the president's tariffs. Canada is one of the United States' top trading partners. Trump announced the U.S. is buying a stake in Canada's Trilogy Metals mining company. It's one of the businesses that stands to benefit from the administration's opening of new copper mining territory in Alaska. Stock in Trilogy Metals more than tripled on the news. And 2 mid-sized banks are merging in a deal that would create the nation's 9th biggest bank. Fifth Third Bank Corp is buying Comerica for $10.9 billion. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow is now down about 9 points. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping those in need is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harrop. No injuries have been reported after emergency responders quickly arrived at the Dow Chemical facility late yesterday in Freeport to put out a massive fire that broke out. Residents nearby reported hearing what sounded to be an explosion. According to Dow Texas operations, the blaze began in Plant B. Officials say that they contained it within the facility block, and all employees were accounted for. No shelter-in-place orders were ever given. This was actually one of two plant fires yesterday. An explosion was also heard at the One Oak facility in Mont Belvieu. 3 people were injured there. San Antonio Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro says Governor Abbott is, quote, abusing members of the Texas National Guard. He spoke out against their deployment to Chicago as part of the federal crackdown on anti-ICE protests.
I'm calling on Greg Abbott. I believe other colleagues from Texas will call on Greg Abbott to recall permission to Donald Trump to use the Texas National Guard for any purpose that involves going into other cities and doing what was done in Chicago a few days ago.
Hundreds of National Guard members left Fort Bliss last night and could be on patrol in Chicago later today. 2 more deaths inside the Harris County Jail last week mark 15 in-custody deaths reported now by the Harris County Sheriff's Office this year. Here's our Sarah Gruno.
The Sheriff's Office said that 34-year-old Pebbles Girardi suffered a sudden medical emergency inside of her cell at the Harris County Jail last Friday, only 2 days after she was booked. She was transported to Memorial Hermann Hospital and pronounced dead. A spokesperson for the Sheriff's Office said that she identified herself as homeless during the booking process. On the same day, 58-year-old Billy Ray Turner also suffered an apparent medical emergency while he was being booked into custody at the Joint Processing Center in the jail. He was transported to St. Joseph's Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. The Houston Police Department, which originally arrested both Girardi and Turner, are investigating the deaths. I'm Sarah Gruno, News 88.7.
82 degrees right now here on the UH campus. We're set up for a high of 92 later today. No rain in the forecast or in the near future. I'm Matt Harrop, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty in for Craig Cohen. Good morning. Coming up this hour, we learn how small changes are reshaping life on Texas death row. Then, a conversation with comedian Maria Bamford, who's performing here this week, and discussing Korean culture in Houston ahead of this weekend's annual Korean Festival at Discovery Green. But first, a new Texas-based national stock exchange has moved one step closer to becoming a reality. The Texas Tribune reports that the Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the Dallas-based Texas Stock Exchange, that's TXSE, or TXE, as some are calling it, which aims to compete with the New York Stock Exchange, Nasdaq. But can it? Here with more details is John Diamond, who's the Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. John, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. So why was this created? Why do those behind this stock exchange want to compete with those other more well-known entities?
Well, I think the word is compete.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Texas firms, they're a long ways from New York, so they don't have the relationships with the financial groups, the networks. And so with more and more companies headquartering in Texas, it made sense that, well, look, we should have more of a local finance system. And I think that drove people. Also, there was some unhappiness with the level of fees and regulatory burdens of the New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq, and so they thought, let's just create our own.
Do it our own way, right? So how would the TXE be different than those, or would it?
I think the idea is that it's going to have lower regulatory burdens. It will have less fees, and then also it's just in Texas, and network effects, circular relationships are very important. It's expensive for smaller and mid-sized firms to do all the stuff they need to do to incorporate in New York. That requires a lot of travel, a lot of relationship building. if there was an exchange here in Texas, which now there will be, all of those costs become easier, or those costs are reduced, and it's easier for smaller, mid-sized firms to get access to capital within networks that they're more connected to.
Any idea if this would be like what we know of as, the stock exchange in New York with people on a trading floor, or is it just going to be digital only, electronic only?
I think obviously the one of the benefits of starting new is you can make it whatever you want. And so you're not tied to any type of legacy. So I do think it'll start out largely digital, but I think eventually they will also have some type of trading floor. I think there will be some of that at some point. It's a long process. It's not like it opens, December of next year and it's fully going. It's going to take several years, maybe it's 5 to 10 years to really build up, the amount of companies and listings and all of that for it to grow and be very successful. And there are risks in that process.
State lawmakers praised this news, including Governor Greg Abbott, who said Texas is swiftly becoming America's financial hub. What would having a stock exchange based in Texas do for the Texas economy, the state as a whole, or is it just a benefit to those companies that are doing business here?
No, it's a giant benefit to Texas. You can't really overstate it. When you think of all the things that go into listing a firm and then managing a firm that's being listed on an exchange, most of those jobs right now are located in New York City. And so if this is successful, it will make it a lot easier for small and medium-sized businesses in Texas to access financial capital, which means those businesses will grow. That'll be great for Texas. But then all of the support work that goes in to listing firms and managing firms that are listed and raising all of the capital and giving it to the firms, all of those jobs will now be in Texas. So I don't think you can really overstate the benefit to Texas. This is a great thing for Texas.
Could be, it stands to reason then it could make it easier, more attractive for companies to want to come here and set up business.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, companies have been locating in Texas due to the friendly business climate and low taxes over the last decade in large numbers. This will only increase the attractiveness of Texas.
As far as that competition angle goes, aimed at competing with the New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq, is it more or less likely to succeed at taking on those entities? And is it poised, better situated to do so than maybe other attempts in the past?
We're definitely poised to compete. The number of firms in Texas, Houston being the energy capital, Dallas, having more headquarters than almost anywhere in the world, we definitely have the ingredients to compete and compete well. And in fact, I think one of the benefits will be that we'll see fees and regulations at the New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq come down. And we've already seen this, the New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq have increased the size of their offices in Dallas because I think they see a real threat from this. And so there's we need to have bigger regional presence in Texas.
Thought it was interesting. The Texas Tribune article noted this wouldn't even be the only exchange in Dallas when it opens, that the New York Stock Exchange has reincorporated its Chicago Electronic Exchange and moving that to Dallas, calling it NYSE Texas. Also that Nasdaq is opening a regional headquarters in Dallas. You may recall I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our name of our program is Houston Matters, show all about Houston, the state's biggest city. So help us understand why something like this might not be located in Houston. Why Dallas?
Well, Dallas is more of the financial capital of Texas. When you look at banking and finance, most of those companies have located in Dallas or just north of Dallas. And Houston is the energy capital of Texas. And so we just have a different composition of firms. We're also a big medical center. But the fact that this would be in Dallas and not Houston, yes, Dallas would get a bigger benefit. But I don't think we should understate the benefit that would occur for Houston. This would allow a lot of Houston companies to have a lot more access to capital, and I think we would see a lot of business growth in the Houston area. And then the just the financial networks and all the relationships that occur. Boston's done really well, being a few hours from New York, so I think it'd be similar for Houston.
Any idea when this new exchange is going to open and start trading?
I have not seen the date for when they're going to start trading. I know that it's going to be a while, and I think even when they start, it will be a relatively thin market. It will take time to build up, the size of the market and to have the depth and liquidity in the market. But the positive benefits are already being seen, even before trading. As you mentioned, Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange have already increased their presence in the Dallas area. I think every day we get closer to trading, the benefits will be accruing more and more to all of Texas.
John Diamond is the Senior Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Policy at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. John, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us here in just a moment. Still to come, how subtle changes to life on Texas death row are changing the experiences of some inmates there, as Houston Matters continues.
With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Discover that while faiths and beliefs may differ, kindness and friendship are universal. More at cmhouston.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Bayou City Art Festival, October 10th through 12th in Memorial Park, an outdoor gallery with over 200 artists, entertainment, and food. Tickets at BayouCityArtFestival.com.
Support comes from Stewart PC, a Houston law firm assisting executives and employers with executive employment agreements, litigating executive compensation and non-compete agreements, and management training. More at attorneysforexecutives.com.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty, in today for Craig Cohen. On Wednesday, the state of Texas is set to execute death row inmate Robert Roberson. In 2003, he was convicted in the death of his 2-year-old daughter, who prosecutors alleged had died of shaken baby syndrome. However, Roberson has maintained his innocence throughout, calling into question that diagnosis and pointing to new science developed since his arrest that he says shows his daughter died from a chronic illness. Roberson will not petition the state for clemency, according to the Texas Tribune. His attorney is focusing instead on obtaining a new trial. Roberson has spent more than 2 decades on death row, and life there during those years has been pretty austere until some changes recently for some inmates. Typically, death row inmates would spend an average of 22 hours a day in isolation. But last year, the state began a pilot program to let some of death row's best-behaved prisoners out of solitary for a few hours each day, allowing them to mingle with other inmates, pray together, or share meals. Investigative reporter Keri Blakinger, formerly of the Houston Chronicle, wrote about that development through the lens of death row inmate Rudy Medrano, who was struggling to adjust to some aspects of this new reality, such as not knowing what to do with his hands when he was unshackled. Blakinger tells Houston Matters producer Brenda Valdivia about these changes, starting with the reminder of what events led Texas to implement solitary confinement on death row in the first place more than 25 years ago.
So all of Texas death row had been in solitary since the escape in the late 90s. There'd actually been an after-action review of that, which did not recommend putting everyone in solitary, but that is how they decided to handle it anyways. Prior to that, they'd been able to have jobs in a prison clothing factory. Some of them had been able to, eat in a congregate setting. They'd been able to get out relatively freely in some ways. There's some pretty remarkable images from that time of prisoners cutting each other's hair, things that would be unthinkable in Texas prisons today. And, it had been that way since around, I think, starting in 2001 is when they started moving them over to Polunsky Unit, although it was then called the Terrell Unit, and Terrell didn't want his family's name attached to the prison that housed death row, so they ended up changing the prison's name to the Polunsky Unit and have held men there in near constant solitary confinement ever since, until quite recently, when they decided to do a pilot program to put 14 of these guys out in group settings for several hours a day, and Rudy was one of them.
Some of these men didn't see each other almost their entire sentence before these programs set off. What's it like to have a neighbor that is sight unseen for years?
It's so interesting to hear some of the things that these guys have described needing to relearn. Think about what to do with your hands when you walk, something that is just so instinctive to the rest of us, but also being able to have face-to-face conversations, like learning to make eye contact again, relearning like the concept that there can be sort of immediate consequences and things you have to work out in interaction. Like if you're in adjacent solitary cells and you disagree, you can scream at each other indefinitely, and it's never going to come to blows. You know that. You don't have to ever actually agree on a thing. But if you're interacting in person, then, you do have to work these things out. You have to come to sort of an agreement in the shared space that you're living in. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's been a learning process. Obviously, the men who've been in it are, I think, very grateful, and they understand that, they need to make sure that nothing goes wrong, that they all behave, because all it takes is sort of one misstep and they would lose what they understand to be a privilege that a lot of them haven't had.
There is a question from the public of, do they deserve peace? What the state of Texas considers some of the most dangerous people. They've maimed, they've raped, they've murdered, some without remorse, some without any empathy, or at least that's what appears to the larger public. Not only do you interact with them, do you ever take a step back and wonder if, as surreal as some of these conditions can be, 22 to 24 hours of total isolation per day, does this also give kind of credence to the amount of security around these people?
I mean, if you're asking if I think that torture is justified, no, I don't. I mean, these are conditions that other countries have, and the UN have said are torture. Even though I think we commonly refer to death row guys as like the most dangerous, they aren't necessarily, because the death penalty is not evenly applied. It just means that they committed a crime in a county that had the money for a death penalty prosecution. If you kill a bunch of people in a county that doesn't have the money to do that, you're not going to end up on death row, because death penalty prosecutions are very expensive. In some cases, there are people that were not actually the shooter. In many cases, we can look at crimes of people who are not eligible for death row that we might objectively say are possibly more dangerous. A serial rapist, for instance, if they haven't killed anyone, is not going to death row. But I personally am warier of that person than I would be of someone who killed someone in a botched convenience store robbery when they were 18. Part of these ideas around what level of restriction is appropriate for guys on death row sometimes stem from what public understandings are about the nature of why people are on death row. But the other thing is, the punishment is being imprisoned. The punishment is being put to death. The punishment does not actually involve being held in conditions that would be considered torture in other countries. Even prison staff have often said to me, the punishment is doing the prison time. It's not supposed to be the conditions on top of it. And if you give them nothing to lose, I think it makes it easier for them to decide that there's really no consequences to acting out.
What is this in-between space like to exist in, not only for the prisoners, but for everyone surrounding this case, from the attorneys all the way to the victims?
I think it's incredibly difficult on everyone in a lot of ways that I didn't fully appreciate until I was reporting on this. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about the prisoners, and I think for them, waiting for 2 decades for the state to put you to death creates some very distinct mental health challenges, to say the least. but also for their attorneys. Some of these people represent these guys for, 2 decades. They've long attorney-client relationships with these guys, only to watch them die of old age behind bars or just be executed one after another. And that also seems like an incredible mental toll. And then for the victims' families, I think in a lot of ways, their perspectives are often not broadly represented. Like, we hear a lot from victims' families when they are in favor of the executions, because those tend to be the ones that will show up and speak out. But then there's also this whole contingent of victims' families that are not in favor of it. And I think that is in some ways also very distinctly stressful, because then I think some of them feel like, well, this is being done in my name, but I didn't actually support it. And even for those who do support it and do want it, the condemned gets multiple execution dates, and you have, 5 or 6 like false starts over the years where there's an execution date and you think this is going to be the thing that brings you closure, and then it doesn't happen. It seems like there's some people that sort of ends up becoming their entire life is waiting for this thing to happen. When it finally does, some of them that I've talked to, it did not actually bring them the closure that they hoped. I think that there's a lot of ways in which this entire process ends up being much harder on everyone, including the people whose name it's supposed to be done in.
Robert Robertson, he has been convicted of killing his child, baby Nikki, in 2002. Now, he's scheduled to die by lethal injection on October 16th. He has chosen not to seek clemency ahead of his scheduled execution. What does that say about the role of clemency in the Texas death penalty cases?
So I actually just talked to his lawyer a little bit earlier about this, but, as has been reported in this particular case, she chose not to, with his approval, chose not to seek clemency because all that it would do is result in a commutation to life. Like, there isn't an option to fully pardon him and just let him out. And his contention has been that he is innocent. I think for people who are innocent and adamant enough about it that they are willing to stake their life on that claim, then there isn't a good option in Texas. Of course, the other realistic thing is that the last time around, the parole board denied that very robust clemency application. So there's not perhaps a lot of reason to think that it would even be successful anyways. Many defense attorneys seem to understand that if there is pending litigation, the parole board is less likely to approve a clemency request and the governor less likely to sign off on it.
So his legal team has argued that his conviction is on questionable forensic practices and silence. There's the discussion of shaken baby syndrome. How often do these cases switch because of updates in forensic sciences?
I guess it depends what you mean when you say switch, right? Like, I think that there is a lot of forensics over the years that have been called into question. Some have been essentially entirely debunked. There is a, junk science writ in Texas, so that theoretically people can have cases more easily overturned if there was things involved that are now determined to be junk science. But actually getting it over the line to the point that somebody's conviction gets reversed is much more challenging, especially when you're dealing with prisoners who are sentenced to death. So there's a number of different forensics that have come under, I would say, intense scrutiny. Everything from shaken baby to blood spatter analysis, scalding deaths that are determined to be intentional versus accidental, bite mark science, which I think is largely debunked. There's a whole variety of these forensic practices that have come under fire, understanding that they are no longer considered best practice, and actually broadly reversing convictions involving them are two entirely different things.
Now, beyond the Robertson case, in the future, what cases do you feel people should pay careful attention to when it comes to death row?
Whew, that's a tough one. I think sometimes you don't know until a case gets to a certain point. I've been sort of focusing more on federal death row at the moment because I think that's where we're seeing in some ways more changes, right? Like, Texas has been executing, is, continuing to execute, not at the pace that it once did, but the basic approach to capital punishment hasn't changed. Whereas I think it's changed since like 2000, right? But in recent years, it hasn't sort of fundamentally had an abrupt reversal. Whereas at the federal level, we've had a few reversals here in recent years, going from, Obama to Trump to Biden to Trump. So I've been sort of looking at that more, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that executive order and the subsequent DOJ memo from earlier in the year about changes to the death penalty and how the death penalty should be administered. I think it'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out and how much attention it gets amid all of the other consistently wild news cycles that we're seeing.
That's investigative reporter Keri Blakinger talking with Houston Matters producer Brenda Valdivia. Just ahead, a conversation with comedian Maria Bamford ahead of a performance this week here in Houston as Houston Matters continues.
Federal funding for public media has been cut. In response, we're creating Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Donations made toward the fund will directly counter the loss of the $2.2 million in federal funds that were cut annually and strengthen our station's foundation to provide our services into the future. Contributing to this fund is easy and quick and makes all the difference to our station. Help build the Resiliency Fund now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Mary Aitken, who is focused on keeping children safe from preventable injuries through research, education, and advocacy. More at uth.edu/manyfaces. Support comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider dedicated to supporting the state's businesses through safety-focused policyholder plans and annual programs. More at texasmutual.com/TXM Advantage.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Michael Haggerty in for Craig Cohen. Maria Bamford will perform Wednesday night at the Houston Improv. The comedian's had a long and successful career in stand-up and is recognized for her wide vocal range and ability to slip into and out of characters on stage.
Have you ever seen somebody order in this country? That's when you realize, hey, maybe we have too much freedom in the United States.
Can I ask a quick question about the coffee? Is it organic? Okay, I don't want it. I'd like to have a bowl of boiling hot water, boiling, with ice, and I don't want the ice to get all tiny.
Comedian Maria Bamford there. Just last week, Bamford spoke with Houston Matters host Craig Cohen about her many voices and her career.
Maria Bamford, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to return to Houston. Yes, I hope it isn't. Is it hot right now?
Maria Bamford, welcome to Houston Matters.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to return to Houston. Yes, I hope it isn't. Is it hot right now?
Well, okay, our definition of hot is a little different from others. I would say we're in the 80s and 90s range these days, so it's still pretty toasty compared to much of the rest of the country, but not super hot. Certainly not for us.
Not 100. So it's cool. It's fall is in the air in Houston.
Well, Houston fall, which everybody else thinks of as late summer.
Yes.
So you were just before we started, you were telling me that you were part of the unfortunately displaced, I guess, somewhat by the wildfires last year in L.A.
Yes, we lost part of our house, and so that's an interesting conundrum where if you have a full loss, then they'll just give you what your house was worth. But now it's sort of an ongoing dialogue with the insurance company, that's in Texas, USAA.
Okay.
So we're talking, is there anything funny about it? Well, I was up there in the ashes, and the National Guard stopped me and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, what are you doing on this property? Excuse me." kind of yelling at me. And I said, I'm just here picking up some succulents. I'm hoping that I can transfer my elephant ear succulents. And he said, sorry, man, didn't mean to frighten you. Just had to make sure you weren't one of the bad guys. And I said, I'm wearing 17 friendship bracelets. Of course I'm one of the bad guys. How do you think I got them?
You began your stand-up career in Minnesota as a teenager, I believe, right?
Yeah, my teens, like 19, and yeah, I always loved public speaking. I didn't realize that it was a thing that you could have a job as a comedian. I know I watched, Carol Burnett and stuff when I was younger, but it just didn't seem like a possibility until I saw on the back of a free newspaper open mic stand-up comedy. I was like, whoa, that's what I would like to do, and so it begins for so many.
Do you remember that first time stepping up on stage? Is that still locked in?
Yeah. I mean, I remember just feeling like it just felt totally natural. And whenever there's a chance to do a speech as a child, I always took it. So I ran for office every year of high school. Yeah, always. But then, of course, would fall apart at the parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order part of the job. Turns out it's not all speeches.
Right. I've found that people tend to fall into a couple of categories. There are those among us who get very comfortable when we step up on a stage or in front of a microphone or in a circumstance where there is this sort of formal structure that says, hey, everybody, look at me. And then there are those who are very comfortable in more traditional social situations, at a dinner party and that sort of thing. What I find are rare are those who are comfortable at both. Are you or not?
Wow. I think as I've gotten older and I'm actually well medicated, I have bipolar. So I think I'm much better in social situations than I was, but that was the thing I initially loved about comedy was the rigid structure of like the understanding is you have the microphone, you're amplified, you're lit. Maybe someone could yell out at you, but you also have the preparation and the time to respond to them. Whereas just chit-chatting can be very frightening because you never know what someone's going to come up with, especially when you're on an airplane, like talking with somebody and of course the world is very scary right now for a lot of people. So I think that can bring up, it's just, I think the chit-chat skills are down in perhaps our country, and certainly I'm not very great at it. I know you just interviewed Tom Hanks. Was he a great chit-chatter?
He was all right, actually. He was very pleasant and very patient with us as we were dealing with some technical challenges, so I was grateful for that.
That is kind.
You are known for observational humor, a lot of it about you and your life and your family. You mentioned in particular that you have bipolar disorder and you've dealt with some mental health challenges in your life, and that's found its way into some of your stand-up. Some of your jokes are self-deprecating. Do you prefer that style and that approach to, say, insult comedy that a lot of other comedians might engage in?
I love the art form. I think it's fantastic. Insult comedy is not for me in terms of I'm much more passive aggressive where I'll do an impersonation of someone in my family for 25 years rather than speak to them about things that concern me. I don't know. I'm probably am doing a version of insult comedy. It just is more cowardly. And but I enjoy a roast, going to a roast as much as anybody. Yeah. I do not enjoy being roasted because then they say things about you that are really true, and you remember what they've said, and but I love the craft of comedy. I'm not a big fan of the hate speech, of like saying, "Oh, we're all laughing about this on behalf," punching down. And I know I've done it as a comedian where I've thought of a punchline that I was like, "Oh, this is hilarious," and I've thought, "Hey, Maria, hey, have you ever been unhoused? Hey, don't make a joke about something you don't know anything about." So, yeah, I mean, I'm always learning, and that is the beauty of the internet, is that you are. I get to learn as I get older of like, oh, that I didn't know about that experience. Being called out. And some people say, oh, it's being woke, but I think it's just being polite. If it bothers someone, I'm grateful that they would tell me. There are so many experiences I don't have, haven't had in the world, and I've definitely been privileged in my life. My parents paid for my college all the way, and then also, would send me $100 here and there, and so I've had a very different experience, I think, than many people, and so I always want to be respectful of that. That's important to me. Comedy is not, putting down entire swaths of the population.
As I was saying, you've been very upfront about some mental health challenges in your life, anxiety and depression among them. Do you find it helps to mine that for comedy?
For sure. I mean, it's definitely, the easiest, the most lazy choice is for me to talk about stuff that I'm already experiencing. So, and selfishly, it's very healing for me, because if somebody laughs, that means they've experienced it or it's familiar to them. No matter how odd. Trying to think of currently I'm working on how I have a volunteer job for the 988, the suicide hotline, and the steps of going through that, where you talk with somebody. But I've also called the suicide hotline, so it's interesting to learn what they're going to say to you when you call. They go through very specific steps. They say, "Are you thinking of suicide?" Which seems like a given. Why do they have to keep bringing it up? Yeah. To do you have a plan? At which point, I'm not going to criticize that plan. I'm not going to say, yeah, that wouldn't work. You can't OD on Lamictal. If you take a bucket full of mood stabilizers, you're just going to stroke out. What I would do were tour me. And I'm doing that long game. I'm doing Ashtanga yoga.
So they have trained you not to respond with alternative suggestions.
Yes.
That's
this
good.
is the time to be sincere.
That's good.
Be very sincere. But it's also a very funny process in retrospect. One thing they do on the suicide hotline is they'll have, as a person who's volunteering, they'll have an owl. I'll earn an owl for every call that I do after midnight. Like, it's like a little video game, which I think that's. It's not the saving of human lives I'm concerned about. It's the owls I'm earning.
Yeah. And there is something in there about a bonus life, like a video game, but good grief. You are also known for having, if I may say, a terrific vocal range. You are among the, I would say, few comedians who I think mine your voice in so many creative ways. You present characters on stage that sound so radically different from your natural voice. Is that something that always came naturally to you?
Yeah, because as a kid, I had a bit of a high voice. My sister has the same voice. She's a physician, so it was like we'd answer the phone and be like, "Oh, where's your mother?" So when you change your voice, I am sure, as you know this yourself, people listen because they think, "Whoa, hey, who's this confident new person who has started a sentence and doesn't know how it ends?" Wow. It takes people by surprise. People, and this is, I think, a misogyny thing or women's rights. The quieter, softer, higher voice is not going to be heard. So it is kind of a fun thing to change up your voice. I do other.
I have a girl from high school that I know that she's from my high school. Her name's Amy Sleeverson. She does multi-level Christian marketing, and she rewrote the Bible as a cowboy romance.
There's an advantage too in that goes beyond the stand-up stage. You've done a lot of animation voice work over the years, and I'm sure the fact that you were bringing out these voices on stage probably helped to contribute to that, I imagine.
Totally. But actually, the first voiceover job, I think it's through proximity that you get most jobs. That's my opinion. The first job I got was because I was a receptionist at Nickelodeon, and they said, "Hey, does anybody want to do a voice for a tiny Chihuahua?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll do it." And they gave me, that was my first job. So I think, yeah, that is, I'm sure it's the same in radio, where there's skill, but then there's also getting very close to where the job is being done.
Who you know, opportunity, absolutely.
Yes.
And to that end, you worked in public television for the series Word Girl.
Yes. Oh, I love her. Yeah, Mrs. Botsford. She was just a happy, very up mother. I was just a mother who I just really supported my daughter. And yeah, that was such a fun show. And I love words, so I'm a big reader. I have library cards on my phone from a couple different cities, and I love to read. So that I felt very proud to be a part of that show.
This is an interesting time to be a stand-up. Late-night comedians are finding themselves under attack from the administration and its supporters on the right, while some stand-ups I saw who agreed to perform at a festival in Saudi Arabia are getting an earful from some of their colleagues on the left. How do you navigate the increasing degree of politics that's getting injected into the stand-up world? Do you try and just avoid it altogether?
I mean, I'm a leftist progressive hippie. So I live better, work union. I'm down for the farmers, workers' rights, all the things. My husband and I would give 11% of our income to charity, which is 1% better than the Jews, Christians, or Muslims. Is that virtue signaling like a lighthouse? So yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's also kind of hypocritical in terms of, these comedians going over to, where is it, Riyadh. Comedy is usually a money laundering situation. I've done so many sleazy clubs where cocaine, all sorts of stuff. There's guns on the table as you're being paid. Like the idea that it's been a clean industry or that anything is like this, it feels a little disingenuous. Like I just go, I don't know. There's no, in comedy clubs, despite the fact that we've had sexual assault happen from a few different comics who are still touring, there's been no training in clubs to, how to report it. There's been no change. So I don't know. I think that's the thing where I think I don't have a leg to stand on in terms of judging someone else's choice.
Generally speaking, is stand-up getting easier or harder to do today?
I'm also 55. Half of it is, I'm sure, so people don't care what I have to say. For me, it's been about the same experience. And I think also, because of my act is very specific, and I usually only do one night, and I do specific crowd. So I don't do a longer weekend where it's people just vaguely walking into a club going, I wonder what's on tonight. People know what they've come to see. So I don't get in positions of, someone getting angry at me or throwing a beer can or It just doesn't happen to me as often as it once did when I was younger. I'm sure that is still happening everywhere in the U.S.
What should folks who do attend your stand-up performance at the Houston Improv expect to see and hear?
Well, I do a lot of characters. I am very wordy. I would check my stuff on YouTube before you see it. Pay anything to see it because, comedy, like music, is very specific. I love what I do, but I may be alone in that. And yeah, so but also avail yourself of the comedy in the Houston area. There are always so many great local scenes that are probably a little bit cheaper that you can go to on different nights of the week. Just Google comedy plus your zip code and you'll find something awesome. It's everywhere.
That's comedian Maria Bamford talking with Houston Matters host Craig Cohen last week. Bamford will be on stage at the Houston Improv Wednesday night at 7:30. Still to come, previewing Houston's annual Korean Festival. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
Support comes from Doran Mayhew, a CPA and advisory firm with tax, accounting, audit, payroll, consulting, and more, serving all sectors, including construction, manufacturing, wholesale distribution, and international. More at DOEREN.com.
It's music there from the group Hanare and a piece called Wasan Moguk, contemporary Korean dance that interprets the flowing brushstrokes of traditional Korean ink painting through movement. Hanare is a local group with a mission of promoting traditional Korean culture throughout the greater Houston area and beyond. Such music and dance are just a tiny sampling of the celebration of Korean culture that'll be on display this weekend at Discovery Green during the annual Korean Festival Houston. It's presented by Kroger. The event is organized by the Korean American Society of Houston, or KASH, and the festival brings together thousands of people each year to enjoy everything from K-pop music to Korean barbecue. Joining us today with more detail is Yang Nam, the founder of the Korean Festival, to tell us how it all got started, what's new this year, and how it continues to build bridges across Houston's diverse communities. Good morning. Welcome to Houston Matters.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Just for listeners who may not be familiar, if they've never been, what is the Korean Festival Houston like, and what inspired you to start it?
So just to clarify, I was part of the founding team. I don't want to take all the credit for
it. Wasn't all you, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it was a group of us that started this 17 years ago. And we looked at the landscape of the festivals that we had in Houston. And one of the things about Houston is it's the most diverse city in the country, and we were very proud of that. And as part of the community, we wanted to showcase the Korean culture as well. And at that time, there wasn't a large-scale festival like we have now. So a group of us decided to just start one. And then our very first festival, we only had about maybe 2,000 attendees. It was small at the Houston Community College over in Spring Branch. But we saw the demand for it, so then we brought it to Discovery Green, and then since then it's just kind of blown up. You know.
For someone who hasn't been, kind of describe what all they can find there.
Yeah, so pretty much if you love Korean culture, we got it, right? So we got great Korean food. As you kind of mentioned, Hannare will be there. They do the contemporary, the traditional folk dances. A very talented team, but we also have a lot of contemporary things as well. So we bring in a boy band from Korea. So they'll do like a K-pop session in the evening. We also have another. He's a Korean American artist. He's actually local, named Hoyeon, and he's coming down to perform as well. And then we added a K-pop dance competition on one of the nights. We have a fan meeting. Something new this year is we have a hanbok fashion show, which hanbok is the traditional Korean dress, right? And we have a artist named Yubi that she's doing like a contemporary take on hanboks, and so we're doing a fashion show for that.
You mentioned K-pop. There's so many K-pop artists that are popular and worldwide sensations these days, and obviously that's not the only part of Korean culture or even Korean music, but has something like that brought extra attention to Korean culture at large, just that people are sort of wanting to know more because they access that one part?
Yeah, exactly. So we just got really lucky that we started at the same time as like the Korean wave. So we grew along with the just interest in Korea, right? So like K-pop Demon Hunters recently just blew up. So one thing I forgot to mention is we're having a huge exhibit. It's called a K Food Fair, and it's in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture. In at Center, so their job is to promote Korean food in America, right? And they're doing a giant booth, and it's going to feature 8 of the largest importers for Korean products, and they're going to have like 50 different products for people to sample. It's all free. They're going to be giving out free food, snacks, beverages, and they're going to have a K-pop Demon Hunter like a collector's item set that they're going to be giving away as well. So yeah, we've just been really lucky that we caught that, and we're very thankful that there's all this interest in our culture, and we just want to share the best of what we have with Houston.
Does something like that mean that in more recent years that some of the attendees or more of the attendees are not necessarily Korean or of Korean descent?
Yeah, and so when you look at Korean festivals in other cities, like in New York or LA, it's predominantly Korean. So their events are hosted by the first gen Koreans, and it's for Koreans typically. And then yeah, I'm just making this up, but we'll say like 70% Korean, 30% non-Korean, but it's predominantly Korean, right? Our event, our festival, from the beginning has been mostly non-Koreans. Yeah, so like it's been maybe 10-20% Korean, but most of the people that come are non-Koreans that are interested in Korean culture. So we love that. We love that Houston just cares, and Houston's very interested in learning about other cultures. So we embrace that, and we welcome everybody.
And a few years back, I had the chance to visit your community center, interview some people, and they were all so nice. I mean, how big is the Korean population here in Houston?
I don't know the exact numbers, but maybe around 100,000 people or something like that, right? It's not a whole lot.
That's plenty.
Yeah. Yeah. But at that time, we were like, man, we have a good amount of people here. Why don't we have a large event, And that's kind of why we just got together and we just started it.
Well, the Korean Festival presented by Kroger is this Saturday, October 11th from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Sunday, October 12th from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Discovery Green. We'll put a link to more information on our post today at houstonmatters.org. Yang Nam is one of the founders of the Korean Festival presented by Kroger. Yang, thank you so much for talking with us.
Could I add just one last thing? Sorry, I completely just skipped my mind, but one unique thing that we added about the festival as well is we added as a sensory truck. So we actually got added as we became the first sensory inclusive festival. So we have a sensory truck that just for people with autism or ADHD or anybody that can come out as well. And then a new feature that we added this year is we're having ASL interpreters for the deaf community as well, in partnership with the future American Sign Language interpreters with Lone Star College. So I want to give a shout out to them, and we're very thankful for them.
Yeah. Thank you again for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
And that does it for another hour of Houston Matters. Our team includes Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Micho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. On tomorrow's show, we seek insight from political science professors and analysts to better understand the latest developments in local, state, and national politics in our weekly roundup. Also, we'll remember a pioneer who fought for transgender rights in Houston, and we consider how something as simple as design can fight racism as we talk with author Amari Souza. I'm Michael Haggerty. Craig's back tomorrow. Join us then for those and other Houston Matters.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners